Hi, Isla. This is Rapunzel. There once was a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length, the woman had hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress, a mean witch who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day the woman was standing by this window and looking down into the garden, when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful Rapunzel herb, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it, and she had the greatest desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she pined away quietly. But she looked pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed, and asked, "What's wrong with you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some of that Rapunzel herb, which is in the garden behind our house, to eat, I feel like I shall die." The man, who loved her, thought, "Rather than let your wife die, bring her some of the rampion Rapunzel herb yourself. Let it cost whatever it will." In the In the twilight of the evening, he climbed down over the wall into the garden of the mean witch. Hastily he grabbed a handful of Rapunzel herb and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it and ate it with great happiness. She, however, liked it so much, so very much, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as she had before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more go into the garden. In the gloom of the evening, therefore, he let himself in again. When he had clambered down the wall, he was terribly scared, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How can you dare," she said with angry look, "to come into my garden and steal my Rapunzel like a thief? You shall suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your Rapunzel herbs from the window, and she felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened, and said to him, "If the case be as you say, I will allow you to take away with you as much as you want, on only one condition. You must give me the child which your wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man, in his terror, consented to everything, and when the little one came to them, the enchantress appeared at once, and gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower. It lay in a forest, and it had neither stairs nor a door, but quite at the top there was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath this and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 yards down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or two it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and went by the tower. He heard a song, which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her sweet solitude passed her time in letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her, and looked for the door of the tower, but he couldn't find one. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once, when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came, and he heard how she cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. If that is the ladder by which one climbs up, I will once try for my fortune, said he. And the next day, when it began to get dark, he went to the tower, and he cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Immediately the hair fell down, and the king's son climbed up. At first Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man, such as her eyes had never yet seen, came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and he told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest, and he had been forced to come to see her by his love. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him as her husband, she saw that he was young and handsome. She thought, "He will love me more than old Dame Gothel does." And she said yes, and laid her hand in his. She said, "I will willingly go away with you, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with you a skin of silk every time that you come, and I will weave a ladder with it. And when that is ready, I will descend, and you will take me on your horse." They agreed that time until that time should come to her. They agreed that until the time they could escape, he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by every day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this until once Rapunzel said to her, "Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son. He is with me in a moment." "Ah, you wicked child!" cried the enchantress. "What do I hear you say? I thought I had separated you from all the world, and yet you have deceived me." In her anger she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice around her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with her right hand, and snip, snip, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. She was so pitiless that she took Rapunzel into a desert, where she had to live in great grief and misery. On the same day, however, that she cast out Rapunzel, the enchantress in the evening fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window. And when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she let the hair down. The king's son climbed, but he did not find his dearest Rapunzel above. It was the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous eyes. "Aha!" she cried mockingly. "You would fetch your dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will never see her any more." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell had pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind around the forest. He ate nothing but roots and berries, and did nothing but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel lived in her wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and fell on his neck and wept. Two of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see just as he did before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received. They lived for a long time afterwards, happily ever after. Love you, Isla. Good night.